Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. On this show before, we've covered a lot of marketing. We've talked about SEO, talked about digital marketing. We've talked about, pretty much everything related to the way that marketing interacts with communications. Well, look, today we're going to continue in that vein, but hopefully a little bit more, because my guest is super successful and very accomplished in that particular area in marketing and SEO, and certainly in everything having to do with the marketing industry, with marketing learning and development and professional development. And I had the pleasure of meeting him years ago as I was exploring membership myself in something called the American Marketing Association, where at the time he was the president of the New Jersey chapter. Now I know that he continues to be very active, even though that time has long passed. He continues to be very active, supporting chapters and members of the AMA on their professional chapters council. I talked about him enough. Let me just tell you, it's Michael Fleischner, the one, the only, the influencer, everybody. The podcaster, the great, somewhat almost neighbor of mine here in New Jersey, Michael Fleischner. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Dan. It's always great talking to you, and I'm excited to really just talk marketing, talk entrepreneurship, freelancing, running an agency. I'm an open book, and I have one shot in me of the vaccine, and I'm close to the second. So I feel liberated. I don't know what your perspective is on it, but I'm excited.
I'm in the exact same place. And my listeners will be hearing this episode probably sometime in June, and hopefully by then we'll all be happily gallivanting everywhere, virus-free and, having barbecues in our backyard or whatever the heck we're supposed to be doing.
Let's hope so.
But hopefully a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. But I'm with you, man. I am halfway vaccinated as well. I got my first shot a couple weeks ago. I think I actually have exactly 2 weeks from today to my second one.
Excellent.
And it is feeling liberated. My wife got the one-shotter, the J&J.
Wow. So she's done already.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous. We can play around with the efficacy numbers and say that, yeah, but I'm 34% better off than you are. But, I don't think that's necessarily pertinent anymore. You just want the damn thing in your body and get over this craziness that we're in, so we can all get back to being great at what we do outside of our house.
Yeah, and look, I feel that people have very short memories, and I'm going to predict it here on your show. It doesn't matter when it comes out, but come fall of 2021, people will have a hard time remembering what it was like during the pandemic. They'll remember that there was quarantining and you had to do pickup, you couldn't eat in restaurants, but they won't really have this visceral feeling of what it was like. We all have short memories.
I certainly hope you're right. It's our survival mechanism to forget pain and remember pleasure, and thank God for that. So, it's been a painful year for a lot of people, but I think you and I were talking about this last time we spoke, and I think we'll get into your journey in a little bit, Michael, but last time we spoke, which was actually very recently because I recorded an episode on your podcast.
Yeah.
Digital freelancers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, we'll get into that in a bit, but I love just the whole idea of podcasting and the way that this has brought us back together after, years of being connected on LinkedIn, but the idea of putting ourselves out there, in the podcasting world, and you being somewhat of an influencer, and I've known about you, been following you for a long time. I actually heard a podcast of yours on at one of those, since we're all virtual these days.
Yeah.
On one of those podcast summits. I was like, oh, Michael, I got to reach out to Michael. And that was, a couple months ago. And, here we are, relationship rekindled and back in front of the microphones. But what I was really getting at was this whole year, you said, it's been painful for many, but for me, it's been a remarkable year. I mean, and the podcast is just one outgrowth of that. And, we were talking about it last time. I've done so much, and, you as well. So I wanted to ask you, how has the year treated you in general? And I know that, freelancing has, being the topic of your podcast, but also something you're passionate about. Freelancing, I think, is now becoming more of the rule rather than the exception, perhaps for a lot of professionals in marketing and communications. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that and how this whole year has changed everything, really.
Wow, there's a lot to
I
unpack
know there's a
there.
lot to unpack there. I tend to stack things on.
Sure. Well, look, for me, my journey in freelancing started a long time ago. So I was very fortunate that this is nothing new to me. And part of me feels like the rest of the world is coming around to my way of thinking, living, and doing. And I'll tell you a story that I've told on many podcasts. So, I apologize to your listeners if they've heard this story from me,
Mhm.
but it really is fundamentally what got me on the road to freelancing and really changing my entire perspective. Which, when I was younger, I said, you know what, people are people and they don't change. And that's just life.
Hmm.
You are who you are. And changes is a very difficult thing. So don't even try it. But I had an experience early on, and this is, I don't want to go into granular detail about my history, but I was always a corporate guy. And as a corporate guy, I went to the office. I was there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week. And that was it. That was my life. That's ultimately how I made my living and filled my days. And I quickly became unfulfilled in that role. And I realized pretty quickly that, yeah, I could survive in the corporate world and I could, put my nose to the grindstone and make a name for myself and do all that great stuff. At the end of the day, all I wanted to do was make money. And
Hmm.
that's a really quick way. It's like the fast pass to being unfulfilled and absolutely miserable. And, I grabbed that fast pass. I got on that line. And then after the ride, I was like, now what?
Hmm.
And as a result, I said, okay, well, I'm going to follow my passion. And I'm really interested in learning about digital marketing and online marketing. And I got sucked in like everybody else to, oh, wow, look at all these great ways to reach people and, earn money on the side and do all these things. So my first foray was publishing a book. And I know for a
Hmm.
lot of people, they're like, wait, that was your first foray?
Yeah.
But for me, it just came naturally. I can write. I'm a great writer. And I'm more of a direct response writer. So I wouldn't say I'm great
Hmm.
at it. I'm sure, with your communications background, you could run circles around me, but I knew enough to be dangerous.
I think I can walk slowly a half circle until you are able to maneuver around me because I'm a very slow writer. I love
Okay.
writing.
Well, sometimes speed wins the day. I don't know. But
I didn't mean to interrupt, but what I did want to ask you though is like you said that it was pretty soon before you realized that you got the fast pass to being unfulfilled. I love that, by the way, that
mhm.
you got the fast pass to being unfulfilled. How long was that since from the time that you started your corporate journey until like, okay, I'm unfulfilled? How long did it take you to figure that
Yeah,
out?
I would say it took probably three bosses over the period of 8 or 9 years.
8 or 9 years, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. To realize that I was in it for all the wrong reasons. I was in it to make money, and when you start with that, you're bound for failure. And that's why I see a lot of these, freelancers. Why do you want to freelance? Oh, because I want to make all this money.
Yeah.
Well, okay, look, I'm not going to lie. I'm a marketer. I use that in my marketing messages. That's why I want you to, buy the books and courses and everything else. But it really needs to come from a place of, I want to follow my passion. I want to do what makes me happy. And for people in this space that we're in, right? It could be a lot
Yep.
of different things. It could be communications. It could be email marketing. It could be market research. It could be
Hmm.
digital, paid, organic, social, whatever. But that's the first reason.
Yeah.
And the big takeaway for me, which I learned many years later, actually recently, Elon Musk had a great quote. When someone asked him, why don't you spend more money on marketing? He said, I take every dollar I earn and I put it into building a better product. I spend
Hmm.
nothing on marketing.
Hmm.
And you could find that out there. There's an interview with him. Maybe it's on Joe Rogan. I don't know. But great lesson.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you are in the moment and you're focusing on delivering a better product, you don't need marketing. And that's the reality. I
Hmm.
think back, Dan, to when I was running large sales and marketing teams for ed tech companies and publishing companies and all these different companies. And do you know that the top salespeople in each of those organizations never used marketing? Not a single one. And I would challenge anyone to come on the show with me and have that debate because I experienced that. And what I
Hmm.
learned was that marketing is not for the best. Marketing is really for that chunky middle to help those individuals who are indecisive, they're kind of on the fence, they really don't have a lot of direction. and it caters to those individuals, which there is a need for. So there's a strong need for marketing. And I'm not advocating that marketing isn't effective, quite the opposite. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, it is really about following your passion. And if you do that, you'll make plenty of money.
Boy, that's a lot there as well. I gave you a lot to unpack. You gave me a lot to unpack. The idea that marketing. So I just want to, clarify something here, because to me, right? I mean, I understand Elon Musk is Elon Musk, and he happened to, build this product that everybody wants, and the marketing is pretty much done for him by his customers, by his raving fans. There's plenty out there about his product, and everybody knows what a Tesla is. Come on, right? And you know, maybe he's chosen to focus quite a lot on more of the, PR and communication side of things, because certainly there's a lot of that when it comes to what's happening with SpaceX. Not all good, but it happens. But the point I was trying to get at is, for a lot of folks out there, marketing means like direct sales, right? It means or like direct marketing, or, an ad, or, you get those annoying emails, or somebody reaching out to you directly on LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, will you buy my product?" So it's basically directly connected to sales. It's like a pitch to pull you into something that you may or may not be interested in.
Which annoys me, by the way.
Which is really annoying.
Not to interrupt, but I mean, we could do a whole show on the things that annoy me, and people reaching out directly on LinkedIn asking to book an appointment is at the top of the list.
I've gotten there myself. And I've had my mea culpas on that one, on some of my shows where I was that guy sometimes. I mean, I tried it out to try to expand my network, and I realized very, very quickly that just wasn't me. And luckily I did, because what do you have if you don't have your reputation? It's crazy. Maybe we'll get to that in a second, because it is part of this conversation about, honestly, what people think marketing is. But the way I see it is that there's a story to be told about whatever your business is, or whatever your product is, or whatever it is that you want to, bring into the world. And that story to be told happens in many places, at many levels, to many people. And you need to reach out to people to hear your story. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. You could be lucky and build this fantastic product, or maybe not even lucky, maybe just very diligent. The product is fantastic, and people will find it. But there is marketing happening there, because there's a myth being built about your product, or a narrative being built about your product that is circulating somewhere. And whether you're in control of that or not is kind of the question. But, the vast majority of companies and of businesses really need to figure out how to get their message in front of the people that, their message applies to, the people that matter. Whether it is, your people who are your ultimate customers, or some other stakeholder, your employees, or the government, or whatever it might be, the media, right? Getting a message in front of the right person at the right time at the right place is what it's all about. So you need people to do that. You need skilled people to do that. I would say that, that's kind of the role that, at a higher level marketing plays. And then you get into the whole funnel thing, and where people are at different stages of their buying process. And that's where different elements of the whole thing come into play. And, then we can get into the craziness of, is this the right time for the salesperson to reach out and, pitch, which marketing kind of lays the groundwork for. But maybe, I might be overcomplicating things. But I can believe for sure that some of the top salespeople at some of the top companies claim that they never need marketing. But I don't understand, or maybe I'm not quite there, not quite agreeing that they're not benefiting from marketing in some way.
Sure. And I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And, I think my point in saying that is, again, a couple of things to unpack here. But part of it is because some of the best salespeople, at least those that I'm talking about in particular, how they are different is they are incredibly strategic. That is the fundamental difference. Now, what role marketing plays in that, again, that can be debated. Sure. But, I'll give you an example. Actually, a guy who he's a COO of another company now, who's actually a fantastic client. But I knew him when he was the top salesperson for Chicago area schools. So I was working for an ed tech company, part of the sales team. And this guy never needed marketing. What do I mean by that? Well, I heard about him closing deals, but he never asked for collateral. He never asked for a specific email marketing campaign. He never asked to
Right.
customize materials. He never asked for digital. He never asked for any of that. So how is it that he's selling everything? Well, I come to find out he is identifying so he is marketing. See, that's
Yeah.
the difference.
There it is.
He is marketing. He's not using marketing, he's marketing. And what do I mean by that? Well, here's how he did it. He made a schematic of everyone and anybody in the Chicago public school system who had any authority, power, or influence, and he marked them as such. And
Market research.
market research, exactly, number one. And then what did he do? He put together his own little pitch. Hello, my name is so-and-so. I understand that you're having a challenge with X, Y, and Z. So there you go, marketing messaging. He put together a message. And then to your point, he had to get in front of the right people. So he used to sit in the hallway at the district offices, at the schools that he could get into, waiting for people to come out so that he could literally introduce himself while they're walking to their next meeting and say, I know this is unconventional, but I wanted a minute of your time. Here's who I am. So now he's communicating. He's delivering the message to the right audience, sometimes at the right time and other times saying, I know this is probably not a good time for you. Can we talk next Tuesday at 3? Right? So he's using these sales and marketing strategies, and he's playing that role. So you are right in the sense that it is true. It isn't that he is not using marketing, but he is generating his own marketing as opposed to throwing something over the fence and saying, can you do an email for me?
Yeah.
Which just isn't effective.
He sounds like a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who are out there doing business on their own. They have to do that whole cycle. They don't realize that they're marketing. They don't think about necessarily think about, okay, where am I in the funnel with this activity? And they don't break it down because they're a one man or one woman shop and just trying to figure out how to get their customers and get their product out there. And maybe they're super successful that way. But it's all rolled up together. When you deconstruct it, you're probably going to come up with a story just like you just told me, Michael, where yes,
Time and
indeed,
again,
that
I
is
think you're right.
marketing. And and that is that's fascinating to me. So it is, it's almost stipulated that to conduct business in the world, marketing is a part of that. And, to reach the right audiences and so on, it's all a matter of scale, I think, at that point. But let's go back a second, because I completely interrupted your train of thought when you were starting to tell us about your book. So I want to rewind a little. So you were about to tell us about your book, that along your journey, you were dissatisfied. You knew that you had to pursue your passion. And you said that you had started with a book rather than, which seemed, like
jumping off a cliff,
the reverse
basically.
of a lot of what other people do. Yeah, jumping off a cliff. So yeah, can you talk about that a little? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's what's interesting, and I'm going to tell you a phantasmical story that you will never forget. And it really stems from this book. And I wrote this book about SEO. I was passionate about SEO, and I learned everything I could about it in a maybe 2 or 3 year period. And I started helping other companies, getting into freelancing, helping companies optimize their websites. And this was many years ago. So long story short, I'm on a webinar. This is like when webinars weren't even really a thing. So it was early in the process, probably, I don't know when it was, 2000 and something, single digits. And after the webinar, I get an email from a guy named Greg who says, hey, Mike, I was on your webinar and I was ready to buy something, but you had nothing to buy. So what are you offering? And, I emailed the guy back. I said, well, you can buy my book, go to Amazon. It's $12.95 or whatever it was, and go buy SEO Made Simple. So he said, well, you and I need to do business together. Call me tomorrow. I was like, that's a weird kind of email, So in the middle of the night, I wake up and I realize that the email is from a guy by the name of Greg Caesar. And Greg Caesar was one of the first guys who made money online, 7 figures, teaching people how to run Google ads. At the time, it was called Google AdWords.
Yeah.
All right.
I remember
that.
He
was one of those guys. He was early in the process and he was fantastic. And he made a ton of money teaching people how to make money running ads for products and services and that sort of thing.
How to do the auctions and the bids and all that kind of
the whole thing.
Yeah.
And, here I am in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning after doing this webinar thinking, wow, is it the Greg Caesar? Like he had a bit of reputation.
Mhm.
So I wake up early the next morning after tossing and turning, and I email him back. I said, "Give me your number. Let's talk." So anyway, long story short, he and I become fast friends, and we decide to build an online course together
Hmm.
called SEO the Easy Way. And I had all the content, and he really had the marketing know-how of how to put a course together, how to market it, how to position it, how to sell it. And during this process, he became a mentor to me. I mean, what did I know? I'm a corporate guy. I'm just kind of getting my toe in the water into the space. And Greg says to me, as we're putting this course together, he said, "What's the most you've ever made online?" I said, "I don't know, $500." And I actually, up until then, I don't think I ever made $500 selling my books online.
$12.95, Greg, the book that you bought.
Yes, exactly. Please don't refund it. So, or return it. So he says to me, he says, "Well, why do you think that is?" And then I still remember it to this day because it left kind of this indelible mark on me. It was an awkward silence after that, and it seemed to last forever. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, because I don't have a list, I don't have a course developed, I don't have the right product, and all these excuses. And he says to me, he says in a very like mellow voice, "The only reason you haven't made more money online is because you don't think you can."
Mindset, baby.
That was my first and most meaningful lesson I think I've ever had. And fast forward, we went ahead, we did the course, we launched it. And on the first webinar that we did, we generated $24,000 in
Congratulations.
one night.
Wow.
Yeah. One night. True
Mhm.
story. You can put Greg in a separate room and ask him to retell the story. He'll tell you the same story. And this is not about making money online.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The
Yeah.
point is, here was a guy who was a 9-to-5er, all about the corporate market. That's how you make your money. That's how you earn a living. That's what it's all about. To, I'm going to follow my passion and allow the whatever you believe in, allow the universe to unfold and just follow my passion. And you'll meet the right people at the right time. And ultimately, you'll change your mindset. And it is all about mindset. And that's what's so key about freelancing.
We're going to get back to freelancing in just a second. But what you said is freaky a little bit, because just yesterday I was recording with another local Michael.
Okay.
There's a lot of us,
Yeah.
a lot of you. But a fellow named Michael Paperno. I don't know if you met him. And he's a longtime comms guy and has his own business doing coaching and training. A real expert in communications, presentations, that sort of stuff. But he said almost the exact same thing. He said, once he didn't say passion, he said purpose, though. He said, once I figured out what my purpose is, and sometimes that's interchangeable and sometimes it isn't, but I think in this case, it's sort of similar. I mean, once he figured out what his purpose was and he started to just pursue that relentlessly, everything else just kind of falls into place. Not magically, right? It's just that, you start to see the way that things connect better, and you start to, get to this point where the activities that you do are all feeding into that purpose. So it's natural, you just start to do better in that respect. And financial success is one measure that comes if it comes, but you will feel fulfillment definitely comes. And the other thing he said, which is exactly what you said, which is the connections, making connections that matter, along the way, like certain people. In your case, Greg Caesar was probably the first of many. But Greg Caesar was this key person who just came along and gave you that push, or that pull, maybe. Not really even a push. He just showed a mirror to you.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that story because it rings so true, which is, in fact, I was trying to finish your sentence mentally in my head as you were speaking. You were saying, the reason that you didn't make money online. And I was about to say, as you were speaking, I was about to say, because you didn't want to, which is different than what you said. So I'm glad I didn't say it.
Yeah, but similar in many ways. Yeah.
Right. So it's about, it's really about mindset. Anyway, so Michael Paperno said, very similar things. And then I've been speaking with people about purpose, and it all kind of comes down to that, to figuring out what your purpose is and what your passions are and all that mix it up together. And, you get a nice guiding light, I suppose. Yeah. And that feeds into like figuring out what you want to do, a lot of people figure this out as a freelancer. Like, how does that parlay into that? So can we talk about that a little bit? Like, how do you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. And, one thing I do want to talk about, Dan, which I think is really important because it's one of the, people always ask me, what's the most frequent question you get asked about starting your own agency or being a freelancer or whatever? And oftentimes that question is, well, what if you don't know what you want to do?
Yeah.
And my answer is go find out. And how do you find out?
That's right.
You do a lot of different stuff. You just keep saying yes to things until you have an experience and you're drawing contrast. You say, you know what? I do not like running Facebook ad campaigns. Great. Now you know that that's not your passion and that's not something you want to do. But if someone says, hey, can you write a blog post for me? And someone does it and they're like, oh, that was challenging, but it was fulfilling. I enjoyed it. It was something that, I'd like to learn more about. Great. Follow that path. And I think that that is a challenge for a lot of people. They're either, hey, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do. Great. Go find out. Try a lot of different stuff and hope that 95% of it fails so that the 5% becomes what you focus on. Or people are, hey, I've been doing market research for 30 years and I want to do it as a freelancer. Either I just lost my job and I don't want to go work for the man anymore, or I have a job, but I'm looking for something else.
Yeah.
And it typically goes in those two directions.
Yeah. And the tricky part of finding what you want to do is just that if you don't know exactly what you want to do, it holds a lot of people back from moving forward. So you need to have that kind of open and experimental mindset, for lack of a better word, right? There's, you have to have, what Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset, you have to be focused on growth and experimentation and failure as learning experiences.
Absolutely.
And there's no way that you can, I don't think there's any way as a budding freelancer, no matter how old you are, but there's no way to kind of move forward with that without being that willingness to learn and fail and move forward. But getting back to this whole idea of
freelancing.
No, it's
Sorry,
true.
I keep getting off track here.
Well, this is your bag in some ways, right? I mean, you have a podcast about it. We've spoken about it before. And I think folks out there think of freelancing kind of like, I can't get a job at an agency, or I just want to do something part-time. And, so I'm going to pick up odd jobs and just do, tasks or small things and get paid for that. Right. And they keep it like as like it's a small thing and don't know how to actually connect what they do to a bigger purpose, or see what they're doing as a business, and then understand that, wait a second, I'm actually running a business here. So I should price myself in a way that values what I do, and, this, it's like a constant learning process. But like, what is the evolution of a freelancer really in your experience? And how does one get to the point where like, in another, I think another thing is people say, I'm a freelancer, or then they switch over and they change. They're no longer a freelancer, they're a consultant, right? There's a point at which they stop saying freelancer and then start saying, I'm consultant. Of course, I'm painting a broad brush, but, so what's the evolution there?
Yeah. And, that's a really interesting discernment because I run an agency. I have 8 people working for me and I still consider myself a freelancer. So, a lot of it is what you're confident in talking about and positioning yourself. And I don't think there's any shame in calling yourself a freelancer. But, let's talk philosophically for a second. I believe, at least for me in my evolution, it was crawl, walk, run. I was risk averse. Look, you can go on Instagram any day of the week, any time of the day, and you can find people, running these ads saying how they made $1 gazillion in just 3 months, with one Facebook ad strategy. And I think that's BS. Don't get me wrong. Maybe there are a handful of people who have done it and they're selling their wares to everybody else. Fantastic. But it's a crawl, walk, run strategy. It doesn't happen overnight. And depending on your risk tolerance, it could take 20 years. For me, I did small projects probably for close to 15 years before I considered freelancing a thing. Because again, I was from this mold that said, you go to college, you go to grad school, you get a corporate job, you work your way up until you're a VP or a chief
Yeah.
operating officer or even a president, and then you take a package. Like that's
It's
your
the dream.
I guess. Well, man, I don't know if it's sour grapes or it just wasn't a good fit for me, but I got to a point where I said I can't do that anymore.
Sure.
And so for me, the freelance piece really started out just doing small projects, helping friends and family, believe it or not, doing things for
Yeah.
free early on, just to kind of cut my teeth and figure out what I was good at and what I wasn't. And what happens is, as you do those sorts of things, you get what you focus on. So I was focusing on freelance projects and delivering good results. And then one friend told another friend who told another friend. And then I got to the point, Dan, where in my freelance business, and this is really what I told myself, which is I'm not going to leave I'm going to call it the comfort of a full-time job because it's not an assurance anymore. It really
No.
is. But I wasn't going to leave the comfort of a full-time job until I was earning as much, if not more, freelancing as I was working full time. Now, a
Yeah.
lot of people say, well, that's crazy. You must have been working nights, weekends, lunch breaks. Yeah, I was. I was taking calls with clients during my lunch break from the back seat of my car. True story. I did
Yeah.
that for a long time and I made it work because I wanted it. I wanted to ultimately break free. And that day, when I was making as much on the side as I was in my full time job, I said, I'm done and I'm not going back. And again, that took me a lot longer than it probably would for 95% of people who are thinking about freelancing. But again, I was not feeling fulfilled. I was a little bit lost in terms of my overall career because I came to the realization that
Hmm.
it wasn't what I expected it to be, not only for today, but for years into the future, because I'm still a young guy, right? I mean, I could have another 20 years in corporate America if I wanted it, but
Sure.
it just wasn't for me. So anyway, that was really the path that I had to crawl, doing a
Hmm.
little, some, projects, walk where I'm starting to really develop the idea of a business, form as an LLC, name the business, get a website, right? That's the walking. And
Hmm.
then the running is this is my full-time gig. And that evolution, I think everyone goes through it, but just at a different pace.
I think it's a very interesting journey because you start off like talking about how you really need to put in the work. And that there is where I think you referenced earlier, those, let's just call them what they are, the
Snake oil
snake oil
salesman,
salesman.
right?
There it is. See, we said it at the same
Yes.
time. I knew it. I knew it was going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
But the unscrupulous people out there who are like, look, I've got a way for you to make money. It's going to cost you $97,
Hmm.
$397 for the full course. What's the value? Deliver something that is $10,000 of value to you for on the low price,
Hmm.
$497, and it's always something 97, right? I get that
Hmm.
psychological thing there, but anyway, these people make a ton of money because they hold out this dream to
Hmm.
unsuspecting people or to people who just are not equipped to handle that, who want to get rich fast, who want to make money quickly and think that are afraid of the hustle in the word side hustle.
Hmm.
And it's not even a hustle, or maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. Maybe they're thinking, I need a hustle instead of thinking, I need a mission
Hmm.
or or I want. That's it. There it is. It's not I need a hustle. It's I want a mission. I want a passion. I get to do something great on the side.
I'll do you one better. It's not I need a hustle.
Mhm.
It's I need to hustle.
Mm.
And there's a seminal
Yeah.
difference
Yeah.
because the people who, using your words, Dan, because I think that was really smart, the people who do the work, who make the effort, they are the ones who win the day. And they do that because, look, I have nothing against these courses. And in fact, I've had courses like that. I will continue to offer courses. I've taken a lot of courses, but I can tell you the ones where you get the money the value back for the money that you pay are from those who are not these 20, no offense, 20 somethings, but not these 21-year-old people
Yeah.
who say, I made $1 gazillion and here's my Rolex watch, because the really successful people aren't wearing watches. Are you wearing a watch, Dan? Let me see. An Apple
It's
watch.
an Apple Watch.
Okay, that's
it's my
different. You're a
tracker.
marketing guy. You're entitled to that. But the whole point is, like, we don't need to show off, right?
Right.
We're doing it because we're passionate about it, and we've spent our lives working in this discipline, doing the things that we do, whether it's marketing communications, design, whatever your passion is. So I think that is a subtle but distinct difference. It's not about finding a hustle. It's about hustling and putting in the work and learning. And sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, but you're always going to come out ahead because you're making these distinctions and you're learning. And that's really what freelancing is all about.
Yeah. It's an important distinction too. And maybe instead of calling it a hustle, it's more like industriousness too. It's like, I know that sometimes I feel great when I say I have a side hustle, because I do, right? And I'm really happy with it, passionate about it. I do it when I want to, and when there's somebody who really can benefit from my help and my assistance, I will help them. You know, and it totally doesn't conflict with anything I do during my day job, which is wonderful, right?
Yeah.
But I'm following your path, which is crawl, walk, run. But that crawling is hard work. Sometimes, you know, then you add to that the podcast, and like, no doubt there are times where, you know, the weekend is gone. There's no such thing as weekend, right? There's no such thing as evenings. It's just time when I'm not doing one thing is time when I do another thing. But, you know, if it's something that I want to do and something that I get to do, it doesn't bother me, right? It's kind of where we are in our lives, maybe, you know, as long as it doesn't interfere with my family. And that's, I guess that is the advantage of kind of choosing to have a full-time, you know, a full job and do this on the side and, you know, kind of do the crawling, because I can just choose when to turn on and off, you know, spend time with people. But I hear what you're saying. And this whole idea of crawling until you're walking, then finally getting to the point where, you know what, it's time to switch over. It took you 15 years.
Yeah. And look, there's another analogy, if you will, that really speaks to the Tarzan effect, which is don't let go of one vine until you have another vine firmly in your grasp. And again, when you hear about these people who say, oh, I quit my job to start my X and now I'm driving a Ferrari, well, buyer beware. Okay. Because it generally doesn't work that way. Not everybody's Tai Lopez or, you know, 4-hour work week or, you know, Tim Ferriss,
who worked his ass off to get to the 4-hour work
Absolutely.
week. You know, he wrote a great book and, you know, good for him.
Yes.
And he works a whole lot more than 4 hours.
Exactly. That's the irony, isn't it?
The irony of it is, but it's not work, right? It's passion, and it's fulfilling his purpose, I suppose. But it's funny you said that about people who just like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. Have you read the E-Myth?
Yes.
A while back. Yeah.
Michael Gerber.
And you know, a great earlier guest of mine on the show, Bill Harper, told me to read the book, and of course I did before my discussion with him, because it was a brilliant discussion, and we talked about that a lot, where you just decide, okay, I'm really good at something, and I've had it up to here with my current job. I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to chuck it all, and I'm just jump in and do my thing. You have that entrepreneurial seizure, right?
Yes.
And I kind of think that people who go into freelancing, you know, have to beware of this. It's not that they're having that seizure, right? Because people come to it, just like you said, from many different angles and different reasons.
Yeah.
Clearly, if I lose my job for some unknown reason, I have a ton of skills that I can do and employ myself as a consultant, as a freelancer, you know, and maybe start another thing, right?
Yeah.
That's my unemployment insurance, is the fact that I can string words together really well, right?
That's a good skill.
You know, everybody needs a writer. It's just a matter of being, you know, then there are other things too. I'm just saying that, you know, that's where I come from. That's where I think of when I think of freelancing. And that's okay. It's my fallback in some ways.
Yes.
But maybe it's not. Maybe it's my retirement plan, you know? And certainly at some point in the future, when things become, you know, when there's a point at which you decide to move on to a new thing or open a new door, you know, doing something freelance, doing something as a consultant on your own is very, very attractive. But I think that a lot of these people have these kind of these entrepreneurial seizures. And that's when those snake oil salesmen come in and pounce.
Yes, of course. Timing is everything.
They're looking for the people flailing around.
Well, look, here's the other thing. There's no shame in saying, I mean, like this woman I was speaking to today, I won't name her name, but we were having a conversation because she's been in corporate America a long time. She was impacted by everything going on in the economy today and was downsized out of a job. And she said, I think I want to freelance. And I said, well, tell me about that. Why do you think you want to freelance? And we went to this long conversation. And what I had to tell her was that freelancing doesn't have to be like your forever home. Freelancing can be something that you do in the interim until you find your next job. And, it's like, I was going to say Chuck Norris, but it's actually Bruce Lee who said, be like water. And that's how, from a career perspective, I think that's great advice. Be like water, go with the flow. Don't fight the current.
Yeah.
If you're in a situation where you're looking for a full-time job, great. How many hours a day does that take you? 2, 3, 4, call it 6. That still gives you 2 hours a day during a work day to pick up a project or two.
Yeah.
And, when you get that full-time job, if you set up your business as a legitimate business, I like the limited liability corporation. And by the way, I'm not an attorney or an accountant, so please seek professional advice.
This is for entertainment purposes only.
Thank you. But, form a business, because now you can write off certain things that you're using to support that business, whether it's a home office or a cell phone or whatever. So there's value to investing that time to getting yourself set up as a legitimate business. And it's easier than you think.
Well, I have an LLC as well for the times where I've had to do some project work and where I still occasionally do. And it's just invaluable. Even to go through the process of setting that up is something that I think, anybody who ultimately wants to, take care of themselves and maybe even become a freelancer or consultant or whatever it is later on at some point, to go through that process of setting up a business and going through all that stuff is pretty invaluable. But, looking at the digital marketing world, Michael, and looking at, everything that you're doing with SEO and with the AMA, and where are the places you think that people should be kind of thinking about if they're going to start freelancing, or where are the needs right now?
It's interesting. So I've been really fortunate, not just in my career, but, in my relationship with AMA. And this year I'm moderating a couple of panels. And one of the panels, I'm speaking with an individual who's a higher up at Microsoft in the marketing area. And he was talking to me today just about all of the technology that's driving huge amounts of data, like literally terabytes of data by the hour. And, if you imagine in the future walking into a supermarket and that supermarket being like an Amazon supermarket where, because of your Bluetooth, they know who you are and where you are in the store. And, if the data lake is big enough, maybe they can identify previous purchases and now they know how to coupon more effectively. And there are cameras in the store who are, measuring things through whatever type of technology there are. I mean, that stuff is happening today. Maybe not on a huge scale, but it's accelerating. So I think if someone were to say to me, hey, I don't know where to focus, where can I focus that A, I would probably find interesting, and B, I could make a lot of money at? I'd say go into marketing technology.
Yep.
I mean, MarTech, whether it's, a marketing technology like a HubSpot or marketing technology that's more granular, like maybe email marketing and knowing how to use MailChimp and iContact and Constant Contact and all these other things, that requires a certain skill set. As you know, Dan, it goes beyond just being a great writer and being able to paint a story and tell a story. You need the mechanism by which to distribute, amplify, and share that content. And whether it's social media or it's some of this marketing technology, I think those individuals will always be valuable. In fact, I just got a call from someone to speak at a conference, and he's a marketing tech guy. He has worked on a lot of platforms, and he will always have a job. He will always have a job. So I think marketing tech is important. And I also think, too, that at least from my perspective, paid search is the other area that requires a deep level of expertise. I have a guy on my team, Pete, who is the best of the best. And I can tell you, this guy has been focusing on it for 20 years, 7 days a week.
Hmm.
And that's why he's as good as he is. But that's also what it requires if you want to command the type of pricing or
Hmm.
valuation on your services that you hope to achieve. So those are the two areas that come to mind.
Sure. When you talk about paid, we could dig into some of this a little bit
Mhm,
too, because I like to.
mhm,
But paid search, your company, Big Fin SEO,
mhm,
is both paid and organic search, right? And
mhm.
do you find most of the work you're doing mostly on the paid side these days, or is it a good mix?
So this is kind of an interesting story, another great story. So, we could talk forever, Dan. This is so
Yeah.
funny. So originally my company, my agency, when I started out was called Big Fin Solutions. Why?
Hmm.
Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. A little SEO, a little social media management. Nobody really knew. And I called a buddy of mine, good friend, and I said to him, he's actually in the MarTech space. I said to him, I'm like, I'm having a really hard time because I'm not getting the level of business that I thought I would get. And he said, well, you have to narrow your focus. I said, well, if I do that, then, I'm not really reaching as many people. It's going to be harder. He said, just try it. He's like, is what you're doing working? And I said, well, no, not really. He said, do you trust me? I said, I trust you. He said, narrow your focus. What are you passionate about? I said, I love search engine optimization because he knows my history.
Hmm.
He knows,
You wrote a book.
I
Come
wrote,
on.
right, right. So he said, so just focus on SEO.
Mm.
I said, and he said to me, I would even change your name to have SEO in the name. I was like, oh, do I really have to do that? So against my greatest wish of keeping things simple, I kind of took a step back. I rejiggered everything. I, launched a new website. I did all these things.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, now my business. So before I couldn't get any of the business, the SEO, the paid, the social.
Yeah.
Now we do all of that.
Full service digital.
Full service digital, even though in the name
Yeah.
is SEO, search engine optimization. Now, why is that, Dan? I cannot tell you, but it works. And part of it, that's part of the
Mm.
story. The other part of the story is when we're doing organic, people always have questions about paid. And hey, organic's going to take 3, 6, 9 months to really kick in. What can we do to bridge the gap? Oh, we can help you with
Mhm.
more direct response marketing, paid search. And so that's also how we got into it. So I don't want to, make
Yeah, of
it
course.
seem like it fell out of the sky, but they really do work hand in hand, as well as content and social and all these other things. Because as you know, you have to be omnipresent if you want to get traffic and ultimately leads and conversions.
Yeah. And that's it's an interesting kind of area of marketing. It still is to me. And I've gone round and round in circles about SEO. There's a school of thought out there that says, look, don't bother because you're not going to beat the big guys at SEO. And, rather than try to worry about appearing in whatever search it is for whatever term it is, just worry about creating great content. Follow the rules,
Mm-hmm.
look at what the SEOs are saying about the content,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe get SEOs to help you with the content.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, forget about the rankings. You're going to drive yourself nuts. But then there's the other school of thought, which is like, no, look, do what you can to get on those rankings because
Mm-hmm.
how much harm can you do yourself by trying to get there?
Mm-hmm.
Just the simple act of trying to get on those in the top, in the SERPs and the search engine
Mm-hmm.
result pages means that you are doing the right things with content. It
Mm-hmm.
means that you are doing the right things with, user experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like it depends on which angle you're coming from. So now I've come around to this whole idea, look, SEO is pretty damn important.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what size company you're with or what firm you're with, but you really need to hone in on what it is that you're trying to get out of the search engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I really want to ask you though is like nowadays though, I'm seeing a lot of attention being paid to competitors to Google and to like, not necessarily Bing or, whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
more like the DuckDuckGos of the world,
Mm-hmm.
which are, as you know, kind of the rabble rousing free, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
protect your information. We're not taking your cookies.
Yeah.
We're not putting cookies on you. The people, the firms you can trust
Mm-hmm.
in this crazy world of cybercrime and identity theft and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I myself, DuckDuckGo, right?
Okay.
And I tend to use the Brave browser a
Mm-hmm.
lot, which also is another way to protect yourself. But my stuff's been out there since 2002 and three. It's almost it's futile right
Yeah.
now. I think if somebody wants to find me, I get these alerts about your information was uncovered on the dark web. I don't know how
Yeah.
many times a week. What am I going to do?
Exactly.
But really, what do you think about that? Like, as far as the industry is changing,
Mhm.
and if you're, your clients or something are looking, do the same rules apply to all these different search engines? And, how do they come to play with you?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a pessimist, but I feel like Google is here to stay.
Hmm.
These other browsers, great, they're probably going to come and they're going to go. I consider them all to Google B players, right? Google be here before they came on the scene and they be here after.
That's
That's
right.
just how it works because
Yeah.
the resources that Google has, if they wanted to destroy DuckDuckGo, they could just add a new feature that says, hey, we're not going to track you the same way we've always tracked you. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but there's something called PII, which is personally identifiable
Hmm.
information.
Yep.
And Google is not tracking personal identifiable information.
Yeah.
They're placing a cookie on your browser. And that's why people like you use DuckDuckGo so you don't get pixeled. But quite
Mhm.
honestly, a lot of that experience people actually like because when they shut it off, they realize they're getting generic ads that have nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
So there's a certain balance between customization and personalization without being creepy. And honestly, Dan, a lot of people are just not all that knowledgeable about it. I
Yeah.
had a client the other day that said our CEO saw our ad, when he was on ESPN and he couldn't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was a retargeting campaign, of course. They're,
Oh,
part of the
God.
network. So like they just don't understand how things work. So I think it's a little
Yeah.
different for people in the know.
I suppose so. I used to get these complaints from higher ups in a previous employer of mine saying somebody took a screenshot of of an ad appearing on our company, on a place where our company article was, right?
Okay.
An ad that was related to a political cause that, was very, very inimical to
Hmm.
what the company represented.
Yeah.
So why are they advertising on our content?
Hmm.
Well, what are you looking at? Is kind of what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
What are you looking at in your browser? This person who took the screen grab. A lot of people do that. They do this with, of course, might be surprising to our listeners, but they do this with malicious intent,
Of
you know,
course. Yeah.
and they go and they specifically search for, spend a lot of time on, you know, conspiracy theory websites or,
Hmm.
wherever, pornography or whatever it might
Hmm.
be. And then they go and look at a corporate website or
Yep.
something that's innocuous. And then they take the screen grab of the 99% sure it's going to be a terrible ad that shows up
Yes.
on the screen, to kind of,
Hmm.
to say, hey, look what you're advertising.
Hmm.
They use that as a lever to try to pull some activist nonsense against you. But it's rare, of course, but it
Yes.
does happen.
Hmm.
And I've had to deal with those questions too. And of course, the person you're talking to does not quite understand that we didn't place that ad there, right? Nobody placed that ad there.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of, how it's so tailored to each individual's context and user experience. Now I've heard that the whole idea of the cookies are going away.
Hmm.
So we'll be moving more back towards contextual advertising, the old fashioned way in many ways.
Hmm.
I kind of think that's a good thing, though. I kind of think it's a challenge to marketers and to communicators and to corporate people to just create better relevant content
Hmm.
and better relevant ads.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree. I think content is still king. It always has been. But unfortunately, it takes more than just good content to get noticed.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the game. And that's why I think from an SEO perspective, it will always exist. Look, when they did the Penguin and Panda updates 5, 8 years ago, we thought that was the end of SEO, right? What do you mean you're going to close down all the link farms? Like, how are we going to
Hmm.
do our jobs? Well, it forced us to actually produce better content
Yeah.
that would rank organically.
Yeah.
So all of these changes that they make, it's not killing SEO, it's actually breathing new life into it. And I think doing the right thing and making it more of a legitimate skill set in order to compete. And just going back to what you said earlier too,
Yeah.
Dan, I agree. Look, you're not going to outrank Wikipedia for Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can learn a lot more about your audience and their search behaviors and the long tail keywords they use and
Hmm.
create some really valuable content so you own those keyword searches.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, that will ultimately accumulate and accrue to your benefit. And I think that's what SEO is about for me. It's
Hmm.
really getting a deep fundamental understanding of your audience and how best to provide content that they want to engage with.
Yeah. And as long as your client understands the necessity of time, to make this work,
Hmm.
And that has a lot to do with the trust relationship that you build. But you'll see different kinds of results in the short term, but it's not, it's a long play,
Mhm.
SEO. So, I mean, and luckily, I think that, more and more people are kind of aware of this.
Yes.
But still, sometimes it's a battle.
Mhm.
Sometimes, especially, look, I'm in the communications, more on the communication side of things now, so I'm not really too concerned with our SEO spend, certainly on my team, but I'm keenly interested in how people are searching for topics that are highly relevant
Mhm.
to us, to my company. Not on the direct, like, hey, on the buying funnel necessarily.
Mhm.
Not further down if for towards like, intent or down towards the lower end of the funnel. It's more about on the demand side and the
Mm.
kind of, are you interested in the kind of things that we like, that we're interested in?
Mhm.
Like using search engines to kind of set up an affinity, a trust affinity between people.
Mhm.
Not necessarily a buying path yet. That comes
Mhm.
later. But anyway, that's a kind of whole thing. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of great tools out there to help you do that. I know that you're experienced with all that stuff too.
Mhm.
But I'm looking here and I'm thinking, how did an hour fly
Yeah.
by? It's crazy. And there's so much more I wanted to talk about with you. And I just wanted to make sure that our listeners know about the Digital Freelancers podcast. Look for Digital Freelancers wherever podcasts are available,
Perfect.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's Michael Fleischner. And do you have a co-host for that, Michael?
I do for some of the shows. A good buddy of mine, Mike Hall, who's also a
Two mics.
business partner. Yeah, lots of Mikes,
Lots of
but he's
Michaels.
not local. He's Texas. So
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, still, you've got Digital Freelancers podcast. Look for it wherever podcasts are available.
Mhm.
Check out bigfinseo.com. That's BIGFIN, as in like the dolphin fin or shark
Yes,
fin, or is it a shark fin or
shark
dolphin fin?
fin.
Or all right. So bigfinseo.com to find Michael. Look for Michael on LinkedIn, and his name will be spelled properly in the title of this episode, Michael Fleischner. Michael, did I miss anything? Is there other places people can find you on the AMA and all that kind of good stuff?
Sure. I mean, I would encourage everyone who is in marketing to look at their local AMA chapter. I know it's very affordable now to be part of that organization, so I highly recommend them. I've been part of AMA throughout my entire career. And the other thing I do want to mention a free resource
Mm-hmm.
that's available. So I developed some software with a partner called Report Hopper at reporthopper.com. So if you guys are freelancing and you need to deliver reports to your clients, whether you manage Twitter or Facebook or Google My Business or whatever the case might be, that's a great free tool that you can use to create beautiful looking reports very quickly and easily to share with your clients.
I'm going to check that out, even though I'm not a freelancer right now, Michael.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Well, thank you.
Man, this was a great conversation. I know that we can continue to talk, but thanks for coming by.
Dan, thank you. And always a great discussion. I appreciate it.
This is awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nessel Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks for listening.